Hey family, welcome to the channel. This is Renate. I'll be reading a Bible verse, some scriptures actually, not a verse, some scriptures. And starting at Exodus, and along with me reading, I'm going to be going over it. I feel like that's better that way to kind of explain it and get everything out that needs to be said with the verses that I'm going to be reading. It's a lot, so bear with me. Try to explain it. So I'm going to give it to you how God has given it to me. So Exodus chapter 14, starting at verse 10, it says, "As Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked. When they saw the Egyptians overtaking them, they cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, 'Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It is better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness.'" So what he spoke was that some people would rather die in their pain, and some people just don't want to be saved. They rather go back to whatever had them in bondage, in chains, and miserable hurt and crying. Go back to their suffering. That's what he was saying with that. Then it says, verse 13, "But Moses told the people, 'Don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm.'" Then it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving.'" So what he said through that was, don't just stand there and just like expect God to do something when we're not moving ourselves, we're not doing anything. So don't just stand there, just get moving. So, because God said, "Why are you crying out to me?" God already put enough in us to win and conquer whatever he needs for us to do. But it won't happen until we start moving. We have to start going forward. Then 16, it says, "Pick up your staff and raise your hand over the sea. Divide the water so the Israelites can walk through the middle of the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will charge in after the Israelites. My great glory will be displayed through Pharaoh and his troops, his chariots and charioteers." Oh, so when it says pick up your staff, raise it, so for that one, he said that God will instruct us as we continue to walk. So as we continue to walk, he will instruct us more. Then it says, "My great power will be displayed through Pharaoh and his troops, his chariots and charioteers. When my glory is displayed through them, all Egypt will see my glory and know that I am the Lord." So God is doing a mighty work for some of us, and he will use our enemies or the same thing that is chasing you to do it. Whatever has you in slavery and bondage, God will use this very thing to bring you out and give him glory. And we will know that only God could have done this. That's what he spoke through that. Then 19, "Then the angel of God who had been leading the people of Israel moved to the rear of the camp. The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them. The cloud settled between the Egyptians and Israelite camps. As darkness fell, the cloud turned to fire, lighting up the night. By the Egyptians, the Israelites did not approach each other all night." So that was just him saying that God has angels leading and guiding and protecting us as well. And then for 21, it says, "Then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all that night, turning the seabed into dry land. So the people of Israel walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground, with the walls of the water on each side. So that was him saying that he is opening up a path. The Lord is opening up a path for us. Okay, so 23, it says, "Then the Egyptians, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and charioteers, chased them into the middle of the sea. But just before dawn, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw their forces into total confusion. He twisted their chariots' wheels, making their chariots difficult to drive. 'Let's get out of here, away from these Israelites,' the Egyptians shouted. 'The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt.'" So that's another thing he spoke was, when God is leading us over, whatever is trying to chase us, to destroy us, we'll realize that God has his hand on our life, and that God is fighting for us, and we're trying to run fast the other way. They'll realize that they have made a big mistake, and it would terrify them. That's what he spoke there. And it will confuse our enemies. Then 26, it says, "When all of the Israelites had reached over the other side, the Lord said to Moses, 'Raise your hand over the sea again.' Then the waters will rush back and cover the Egyptians and their chariots and charioteers. So as the sun began to rise, Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the water rushed back into its usual place. The Egyptians tried to escape, but the Lord swept them into the sea. Then the waters returned and covered all the chariots and charioteers, the entire army of Pharaoh, all the Egyptians who had chased the Israelites into the sea. Not a single one survived." So that is given was, be careful who you mess with and try to chase down, especially when God is leading the people away from you. You don't know the anointing, the covering, the call, the assignment that God has on someone's life. So, and he's not going to let you destroy them and just try to feel like you have that power, authority. He's not going to allow that. And not to mention that God's love, his unconditional love for us, his children, and he's our Father, our best friend. He protects us. He loves us. And also along with that, he gave me another scripture, which is in Genesis 31. So that reads, so it's about when Jacob was leaving, like Rachel, he married Rachel and the other lady. And so he was leaving their father house or whatever. And so God had told him to leave, because of how he was being treated, whatever the case may be. And the father started trying to chase after Jacob. So it says, Genesis 31, I'll read just like, her name was Leah, sorry. So it says, I'll read 31 and 2. It says, "And Jacob began to notice a change in Laban's attitude towards him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, 'Return to your land, to your father and grandfather, and to your relatives there. I will be with you.'" So God told him to do that. And then so when Jacob ended up leaving, Laban didn't know. And so he left and he didn't tell him. So 31 and 20, Genesis 31, chapter 31, verse 22 says, 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he gathered a group of his relatives and set out for hot pursuit. So he was chasing after him, trying to, track him down, more likely, trying to harm him and stuff like that. But then 24 says, "But the previous night God had appeared to Laban the Aramean, I believe that's what it says, in a dream, and told him, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. And then also 31 and 29, if you scroll down a little more, it says, Laban, he caught up with them and, talked to him and stuff like that. And Laban told him, Jacob, I could destroy you, but the God of your father appeared to me last night and warned me, leave Jacob alone. So God warns people, like, you don't want to do that. Like, leave my people alone. So that's what he gave as well. And then, so back to Exodus. I would encourage you guys to read these scriptures yourself. I didn't notice all of this stuff was in the Bible. I've heard about it, but actually, like, reading it's a whole different feeling, and it's just better to read it yourself. And you'll know that I'm not lying and nobody else is lying. So back to Exodus. The last one is Exodus 14:29. It says, but the people of Israel had walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground, as the water stood up like a wall on both sides. That is how the Lord rescued Israel from the hand of the Egyptians that day. And the Israelites saw the bodies of the Egyptians washed up on the seashore. When the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had unleashed against the Egyptians, they were filled with awe before him. They put their faith in the Lord and his servant Moses. So what he spoke was, when we walk across on the dry ground, of course, God is what put these people underwater, so they all died. Like, they didn't even make it out. And so, of course, we don't want to see nobody die. Like, I don't want to see nobody die. But what I do want to see, what he also said was our old ways, our old mindsets, like stubbornness, laziness, attitudes, procrastination, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, brokenness. All of these and a lot of other things that we face can be left in the water, can be drowned off of us, off our lives in the water once he brings us over to to our other side, bringing us across on dry land and to the other side eventually. So it's all about letting God, whatever you need to leave in the water, leave it in the water. Let God remove it off of you and transform you into becoming a better person, and let you transition into doing what he needs you to do. And then just let the Lord sweep it into the sea, because he swept all of that under the sea. So let him sweep whatever he needs to sweep into the sea and take it off of you. And then we'll always put our trust in God. So this is what he spoke during my quiet time with him, and also with these verses. And again, that's Exodus 14:10 through 31, and then Genesis 31:24 and Genesis 31:29, and I also read Genesis 31:2. But I would read all of Genesis 31, honestly, so you'll get the bigger picture. But you can read a couple more chapters so you'll really understand. But I'll read all of them so you'll understand for yourself and see what he speaks to you. But this is what, he spoke during these verses. And, whatever he's trying to move you away from, and just allow him to do it. And if you try and track somebody down and chase them, don't do it. It's not worth it, So God is not going to have you or nobody messing with somebody that, he is ultimately he has a call on their life. He's not going to let you destroy that person because of your feelings, or like because you just so angry or mad, or you just can't, you refuse to let that person go, God is not going to let you take that person out. So that's what he spoke to me during this. So that's why I said read it for yourself, see what you get out of it, and just have a nice day. Hopefully this inspires someone, and have a blessed day. Thank you.